Speak to Dr. Mads Gilbert in Oslo. He has worked in Gaza, training as junior doctors. He's the medical head and professor at the Clinic of Emergency Medicine at the University Hospital of North Norway. Mads, thank you so much for your time. We talk about collective punishment being against international humanitarian law. Withholding aid to starving civilians who have played no part in the conflict, that would surely be collective punishment.
Absolutely, Adnan. You're absolutely right. And it's an abhorrent way of punishing or killing innocent civilians or any human being for that sake. Look, humanitarian aid should never be a bargaining chip. It is not up to bargaining. That is a human right, which is fundamental and should be made accessible to all people, wherever in the world, whatever color, whatever status, and whatever gender. So what Israel is doing, again, with the support from Europe and from the US, is to degrade the human value by saying that if you don't comply with us, we will thirst you, we will starve you, we will deny you soap and water and hygiene, and we will not allow you to be treated for diseases. So this is a very degrading way of dissolving what we had, in a way, with some sort of international order. So when UNRWA now says that they have enough food for 3 months for the whole Gaza population waiting outside the fences around Gaza, of course, the only way that we can accept to handle this is to have a free, unlimited influx of this food to the people of Gaza. And Israel are the ones who are breaking the ceasefire. They should allow 600 trucks. Until now, they have only allowed maybe 300 trucks. They have not opened Rafah, and they are openly violating the ceasefire precondition that should allow a free influx of food and medical material.
Rafah, you mentioned, Mads, is supposed to also be for people to be able to leave Gaza for treatment, medical treatment abroad. What sort of injuries are we talking about that people need to go to another country to get the treatment they need?
Yeah, you're right. According to the last UN OCHA report, there are 12,000 patients waiting in Gaza for expert treatment abroad. Some of that treatment will be life-saving. Much of that treatment will be the saving function of the patient with amputations and with war wounds. So many of these injuries are complicated multi-trauma, complicated orthopedic injuries in children. And it is, of course, complications to the common diseases that people have, like cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and other medical diseases. So this is another way of squeezing the life out of the people of Gaza by denying them exit to have needed treatment, which will be granted by positive and supporting nations. And I'd like to remind you of one scientific report that came in January that showed, it was published in The Lancet, that showed that the combined effect of the bombing, of the destruction of healthcare, the lack of food, the lack of water, and all the infectious diseases, the combined negative effect of this has actually reduced life expectancy in Gaza from 75 years to 35 years. So it has halved the longitude of life that you can expect. So the kids who are born in Gaza today, and there are 120 deliveries approximately per day, they can only expect to live until they're 35, not until they are 75. So that gives you an impression of how extremely negative and long-term all these combined effects are. That's the slow genocide, the hidden genocide, the reduction in life expectancy in Gaza.
That's an absolutely shocking statistic, Mads. There's another one as well. I believe that there are more child amputees in Gaza per capita than anywhere else in the world. Now, we also have the issue of starvation. We have the issue of famine and malnourishment. You've spoken to us about this before, but we need more. We need the same again, Mads. Explain to us what people who have suffered from malnourishment for months and months and months, what sort of treatment they need. Because it's not just a question, is it, of putting food in front of them and saying, here, you'll be fine.
Right. Can I first give you a little feedback on the amputation question?
Yeah.
Because we know from our studies during the Great March of Return, during the Intifada, that the Israeli occupation forces, they target the limbs, and they target the knee joint and the ankle joint and the elbows in order not to kill, but to invalidate, to make people so handicapped that they will never again try to resist the occupation. And now there are between 1,000 and 2,000 at least child amputees in Gaza. We did a scientific study on the amputees in Gaza that we published a few years ago, and we calculated that on an average, an amputated Palestinian will need 10 surgical operations before that limb is restored to the extent with the prosthesis that the patient, the amputee, can walk again or be functional. So if you have 2,000 kids with amputations in Gaza, it will need 20,000 surgical operations to rehabilitate these kids. And given the situation with 2/3 of the hospitals destroyed or closed and only 1/3 partially operating, this shows you the massive effort we need to do to reopen, restore, and repair and support the Palestinian healthcare system. As for the famine, when people have been starving for a long time, in particular children, you need to start the feeding in a very, very controlled and careful way. You will be very hungry, and the impulse will be to start eating as much as you can, which can cause a refeeding syndrome with metabolic complications that can even kill you, in particular people who are weak, who are deceased, and who are children. So for the refeeding of starved people, you need to control the salt balance in the body. You need to control the intake of calories and the balance between proteins, fat, and carbohydrates. And this takes a fully functioning healthcare system. So just to have the food in does not solve the problem of taking care of those who have been really starved. But that said, of course, it is of utmost importance now to have Gaza opened, to have Rafah opened, and to have the delivery of these 3 months of supplies that UNRWA has waiting outside Gaza. And I think the moral breakdown of the Western governments is again illustrated by the fact that they go to Sharm el-Sheikh and they lick the shoes of Trump, and they do not say anything about complicity, about the war crimes, and about who has to pay the cost of the war, or the attack rather, on Gaza.
And Mads, I'd written in my notes before our interview that the EU had threatened to end its free trade agreement with Israel. It never actually implemented it. But, we're going to talk to you regularly because you instruct us so much about what we need to focus on, because this thing is being controlled by Israel, and it's only Palestinian journalists and people that in Gaza who can tell the world what's happening. Thank you so much, Mads.